Welcome. Um, this is a special podcast coming to you. Your boy Corey and my co-host on this podcast is you guys may have heard of him before. He's been on the Smiling Suffer podcast before. And he goes by the name of Toby Walker. And this is a separate podcast. It's going to be called The Two Tobis, where we're going to be discussing more politics-related issues, current events, history. This is it's a different direction from Smiling Suffer. Smiling Suffer is more culture, music, art, pop culture, current events also. But this is going to be more heavily tilted towards politics and philosophy and just a more somber podcast. And like I said, it's going to be called Two Tobis. It's nothing really that clever about the name. My middle name happens to be Toby, and my co-host name his name also happens to be Toby Walker. Toby, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Welcome everyone. It's really a pleasure being on here. This is an idea we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks, and
Yep.
as Corey has already said, the whole idea and the whole genesis is to talk about current events and things which are currently going on. And just basically, my name is Toby Walker. Currently, I live in Florida.
You live in Florida, but you're here right now in the DMV, right? Hello, Toby. I think you're breaking up. Hello.
Hello.
Yes. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said last.
Yeah. So, like I was saying, basically, I'm passing through the DMV, and within the next month, a couple of months, I should be out of here. And like I said, I and Corey, we've been on this whole concept for the past couple of weeks.
Yep.
And the whole idea is to talk about politics and to talk about things, which are currently going on.
Yep. And the first thing that we have on our agenda here is again, this is not. This is not any. It's not like a strict agenda. We're gonna touch on different things as we go along. But I did want to talk about the Harper's weekly letter that came out a couple of weeks ago. For those that don't know, this was a letter that a bunch of authors and writers put together. And I bring up this letter because I think it signified. It was almost like a cry for help in a lot of ways. Toby, you know the letter I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was called A Letter on Justice and Open Debate, and it was signed by a bunch of well-known authors, from Salman Rushdie to J.K. Rowling to there's a lot of names here. There's a lot of names I don't know here too, but there's a lot of names that I know here. Barry Weiss formerly of the New York Times. Let me see who else we have here. Columnists, a lot of columnists too. So a bunch of them are also happen to be scholars. Like there's a Harvard University scholar here called Atul Gawande, Todd Gitlin. I mean, these are people that are well known in these, I guess you can call them intellectual circles. That write. Some of them write novels. Some of them write articles. Some of them have have written papers. And it looked like it was a mixture of a lot of people. And what the letter was crying out for was, and I can't read the whole thing. In case you want to know, just if you Google A Letter on Justice and Open Debate, Harper's Weekly, you'll find the letter there. But Toby, can you help us break down exactly what they were trying to do with this letter?
Yeah. Just for the whole letter, just give some real quick background. Like, we obviously know, I assume that people know what's been going on in the past couple of weeks with the activism, with the new awareness around issues to do with racial inequalities, racial injustice, and there has been this whole rise and this whole concept called canceling people. And
Yep.
basically, the whole idea behind canceling people is like, maybe people hold unsavory opinions. They've said, things they shouldn't say in the past. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, they are canceled. They are removed from, like, their places of work or, like, things they
Yeah.
do and things like that. And the whole rationale and the whole logic behind canceling is it's basically believed that in many ways, some of the authors have said things, number one, either which are oppressive or which are insensitive. And
Yep.
basically, the whole idea is in order to fight, oppression, inequality, that, such a society can be built in which things like that are said. And
Yes.
one thing that is really key to, like, this whole canceling phenomenon is the whole idea that even if words or thoughts are just said,
Yeah.
in and of themselves, they can constitute acts of violence.
Violence.
So,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes. Yeah. Is this
so
idea of words of violence, and based on
exactly.
that, they feel like, and some of them react. The way some of them react is they feel like they have to inflict violence on you because of your words, because your words
Hmm.
are indirectly causing, I guess, systemic
Biases and things
biases
like
and
that.
oppression on a class of
Hmm.
people, whether
Hmm.
it be women, whether it be black people, whether it be minorities. Your words
Hmm.
have consequences. That's what they're trying to tell us. And as a
Hmm.
result, people that come out and may have some, it could even be like a nuanced view on the topic where they're not necessarily in line with what these protesters or activists are saying. Maybe it's just like a more
Hmm.
nuanced view. They find that as you're contributing to that oppression, and as a
I
result,
mean,
you are
and
justified to be canceled. And that's why these columnists, because I guess they've seen it in their circles. You see,
hmm.
an example of this is in the New York Times recently. Barry Weiss, one of the people that were on this column, it's funny because
Hmm.
she had written this letter before she quit the New York Times, right?
Hmm.
And it's so
Hmm.
weird how it all played out. She got pushed out of the New York
Hmm.
Times because, for those that don't know, the New York Times has been radicalized lately. I mean, any objective person can see that. Any objective person can see that, and there have been examples of this, of where this has played out. Um, an example of it, for instance, was when Tom Cotton, right, put out an article on the New York Times saying that, look, we may have to start thinking about using the military force to help quell the violence in the streets. This was at the peak of the violence. I don't know if you guys remember, but he had written an article, and that was all it was. It was his opinion, and
And
it happened to be an opinion. Toby, correct me if I'm wrong. It happened to be an opinion that was held by what, a majority of the population at the time, right?
yeah, and not only was it a majority, and this is why, like, the whole cotton thing was so key is Cotton, like, basically is a sitting senator from Arkansas.
Yes.
And regardless of how, people feel about him, his views, his politics, and things like that, in many ways, he kind of represents a view of how things should be done. So the whole idea is
Well.
really
Then Toby, I have to
speaking.
stop you. That's objective, right? Sorry, that's subjective, right? Now, yes, I agree with you that, to me, I think that's how things is in the streets. I think you need some
Hmm.
kind of force to put that balance away. But
Hmm.
some people have arguments against that, and that's why I want to make sure that we're giving all sides. Some people have arguments against that, but I think
Hmm.
regardless, right, it's still an opinion that anyone
Absolutely.
should have a right to hold. And
Hmm.
it wasn't out of the ordinary to see that on the New York Times being published.
Hmm.
But this caused a
Absolutely.
huge backlash, a huge editorial backlash, to the point that New York had to put up some kind of retraction or some kind of
Hmm.
statement saying they were apologizing that we shouldn't have done that, because no one should ever encourage the use of military on American streets.
Hmm.
But then,
Hmm.
you're missing context, right? You're missing context. So what if there really were terrorists, like actual terrorists that invaded America? Would you say we shouldn't have military defending citizens? You see what I'm saying?
I mean, obviously, yeah, that's true.
So,
That's true.
so
I can actually see where you're going.
yeah, you see where I'm going. So my point is, even if you disagreed with the idea of putting people on there, having that opinion, there's nothing violent about having that opinion. It's an opinion, and it happened to be an opinion that was held by a majority of the country at the time. This is just a fact.
Absolutely.
This is just a fact. And the New York Times, I'm giving this example as showing how the New York Times has been radicalized. They actually came out and they had to retract this. The editorial board ended up firing their head at the time. I don't know if you remember, Toby. I mean, it was a big deal. It was a big deal.
Absolutely true.
It was a big deal. And this was one of the things that Barry Weiss pointed to when she eventually quit. That, look, I may not agree with him, but he's allowed to have his opinion. Like, how can you call yourself a journalistic entity, right? And you're playing this arbitrator role on what you deem to be worthy of publishing, opinions that are worthy of, like, at some point, are you telling me that the New York Times is going to be our moral judge for what should be publicized to it makes no sense. It makes no sense, Toby. None.
Like, let me actually come in here. I mean, like, in a way, in a sense, I would argue that the New York Times already feels that position. I mean, even long before this whole activism thing took place. Because, like, whichever way people, like, cut it or view it, like, the New York Times is a publication whereby it carries a lot of prestige and influence.
It does.
Not only in this country, but
in
beyond
the world.
This country.
There are people that get the New York Times all over the world.
Exactly. And one thing I strongly feel is, obviously, I feel the whole editorial team inside the New York Times at the time that Cotton wrote his opinion piece, kind of understood that basically, if they should allow his opinion to actually be published in the New York Times all over the world, it's a position which can carry a lot of weight and get lots of people thinking. And I mean, like, one thing I would just say in general, and this is just my opinion, and this is more of, like, background, is even before the rise of all the issues to do with activism inside, the New York Times, issues around, things that should be published or not published. The truth is, at the end of the day, to some degree or another, there have always been what I'll call, quote unquote, the range of acceptable opinion, which has always existed, among all these publications and things like that. And in a way, I feel what we're seeing with, all the canceling people, the activism and things like that, is basically the apex of something that has existed for the longest of time.
For a while. It is.
So, and then one thing else which I would also add is, and this is kind of just backtracking, like, we're talking about the whole thing about whether words equals violence and things like that. Like, there is something key, and it's my own opinion.
Yes.
I definitely I definitely do not hold the opinion that, like, people's words do not have consequences. Now, let me explain why.
Wait, you don't, or you do hold the opinion?
I don't, and let me actually explain very well.
Okay.
And I'm not supporting.
Okay, but then you would admit that there are some exceptions, like if you were to yell, scream fire in a theater.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. And the Constitution actually does make exceptions for that too, by the way. But go on.
True. And I would also add,
or a call to violence that could have consequences.
Yeah.
Too. Okay.
Yes, that can have consequences. But, like, even just on a one-to-one basis, right?
Yeah.
Let's say I'm speaking with someone, and someone says something wrong, someone says something bad to me, someone disses me or something, right? Even though, like, I might not, punch the person back or physically harm them for what they said.
Yeah.
The fact that they express themselves, express their minds, told themselves what they feel about me, automatically means that I know exactly how to handle them. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
So, for example, if someone comes to me and begins saying something you're a bumbling fool, you're an idiot, things like that,
Hmm.
there will be consequences to that. And probably the biggest consequence is I probably will have nothing ever to do with you again.
Yes,
So, like,
you can make
in
that
that sense,
decision. Yes.
exactly. In that sense, that's what I meant. In that sense, but apart from that, the whole thing about canceling people because of things they said, and then
Yeah,
one thing
but
also
sorry. So
add.
I want to bring up though because there's someone else on this list, and I don't want us to lose track of it. Is another person that I mentioned, J.K. Rowling, and obviously you
Mhm,
can tell why she would be on this list, right? Yeah, keep in mind, J.K.
mhm,
Rowling is one of the most liberal people you will find out there. I mean, it doesn't get more liberal than
absolutely,
she's on board with all the racial injustice. She's on board with
absolutely,
everything, right? The only, the
absolutely.
only, the only part where, again, this is where it comes to having nuanced opinions on certain matters. The only thing that she
Mhm,
seems to not be fully on board with is the idea of um trans of the trans community. Man, Toby, I'm scared. I'm scared to enter this topic, but you know where I'm going with this, right? Are you familiar
Yeah,
with
yeah,
J.K.
yeah,
Rowling's
yeah,
opinion? J.K. Rowling's
yeah.
opinion is basically that a man, or someone that transitioned from a man to a woman, yes,
Mhm,
they might be considered a trans woman, right? But
mhm.
ultimately, you you cannot regard that person as what she's saying is that person really is her fear is that trans women are taking up
It erased
women's
the
spaces.
achievements of
Yes,
women and
yes,
things like that.
trans women are taking up
Mhm,
women's spaces. So in cases like,
mhm,
for instance, you had instances where like track athletes, they start
mhm,
allowing trans women to compete with women, and in some
mhm.
cases they would beat these women. And she felt like, well,
Yeah.
they're invading those spaces, and they shouldn't have that category. They shouldn't be allowed to invade spaces of women. They call these people TERFs, TRFs.
Mhm.
I think I forgot what the turf means because it's good. Let's at least try to start educating our, because look, this is all stuff that's going on that a lot of people, they kind of know, they're not really sure, but
Mhm.
turf means trans exclusionary radical feminists. So it's
Feminist.
these
Yeah.
feminists that they feel like
Do not believe
trans,
in.
yeah, they do not believe in the idea that a trans woman is a woman. In fact, up until
Mhm.
recently, J.K. Rowling put out a tweet. There was this article saying, something about, and we talked about it on the Smiling Software podcast. The headline of the article says something about, women that, men that menstruate, or something like that. Men that
Mhm.
menstruate. That was what the
The article
the
is about.
article said, right? Or the headline of the
Mhm.
article. And J.K. Rowling came and was like, you mean women? Because her what she's trying to explain is that if you menstruate, you're a woman. You can't be a man that menstruates. But
Mhm. Mhm.
but the article is really referring to women that have transitioned into men,
Yeah.
but are
Mhm.
still hold the components that make them menstruate.
Of.
Do you guys understand what I'm saying
Mhm.
here? So that was what the article
Yeah.
said, and J.K. Rowling was I guess in a way being snarky, but what she said
Mhm.
something that was obvious, saying, "Look, they're women. Really, they're really women. Yes, they might appear as men and they might identify as men, but ultimately
Mhm.
at the base of it, they are women." And
I mean,
she had a lot of backlash for that. So again, a lot of people have have held up J.K. Rowling as this person that's actively deploying violence on the trans community. That is how she's seen in within the trans community, or within certain segments of the trans community. Because I don't like these people that feel like they're speaking for all the trans people, because there are trans people that
mhm.
actually do not ascribe to some of these things. There are trans
Yeah.
people that have
Absolutely.
accepted that, yes, we transitioned, this is what we wanted to do, and
Mhm.
it shouldn't mean that we should then change the definition of what a woman is. There are trans people that actually
Mhm.
believe that. Now, keep in mind, we
Mhm.
haven't given our opinion here, but I'm bringing this up as another example
Yeah.
of people that they've tried to either censor or silence, and,
Also silent.
and these are people that showed up, that signed up to this letter. Now, let me just read a blurb from this letter. This is towards the ending.
Okay.
It says, this stifling atmosphere will ultimately harm the most vital causes of our time. The restriction of debate, whether by a repressive government or an intolerant society invariably hurts those who lack power and makes everyone less capable of democratic participation. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposure. I keep saying this. The best disinfectant is what?
One thing,
Sunlight.
one
Sunlight.
thing I would
Wait.
say.
I want to finish.
Okay.
Is by exposure. Sorry. The way to defeat bad ideas is by exposure, argument, and persuasion, not by trying to silence or wish them away. We refuse any false choice between justice and freedom, which cannot exist without each other. We need to preserve the possibility of good faith disagreement without dire professional consequences. If we won't defend the very thing on which our work depends, we shouldn't expect the public or the state to defend it for us. These people came out strongly, right? Now, sorry, Toby, go ahead. You're about to say something. You're about to add something.
Yeah. One thing I was about to say, and one thing I've always felt like in general, just like things like free speech or like fundamental rights and things like that. It's like like in many ways, people who like are part of the whole council culture, train and things like that, like they supposedly are doing this in the name of like minorities, people who have been historically oppressed and things like that. But like the way I've always seen it is that it's extremely short-sighted because
really
look at this way. Let's look at like things like let's say the civil rights movement. Let's even say the recent gay rights movement and things like that. Right. At the end of the day, the way all movements eventually move from not being in the mainstream to being in the mainstream is they begin with a small group of people. They pretty much are a minority opinion, and then with time, they use things like freedom of speech, make their case and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And here's what I've always felt: it's very short-sighted for Black people to jump onto movements that do not take fundamental rights very seriously, because all the achievements we talked about of historic oppressed people and things like that, they all have been made possible within that framework.
Yes, that's true.
So to actually say that, okay, not to say, but implicitly to actually abandon that is very short-sighted. And then the last thing I would also add, not to say that I'm all gloomy or I'm all pessimistic, is at the end of the day, just because all these rights, like hard-won rights, have been won, doesn't necessarily mean it can be reversed. And I'll also add that it's
true.
Very ironic.
No, sorry. Repeat that. You said because all these rights have been won, doesn't mean that these rights cannot be reversed.
Yes, and the most ironic part about me saying this is I'm not on the train with the people who, at every other second, are talking about how they want to send you back to 1965. I'm not on that train. Or even then, I am not stupid not to realize that nothing is ever permanent and nothing can ever stay as it is. Because, okay, look at this.
Toby, it's funny you said that because, believe it or not, we are starting to see some signs of some of these things being rolled back they're doing it under the guise of reform, social justice reform. Best believe it or not.
Yeah.
We're seeing it. I'll give an example. California, they've introduced a legislation where they want to get rid of equal protection under the law. Basically, they want to remove. So, there's a law that says there's a federal law that says, and I think it was instituted in the 60s, right? That says everyone must be treated equal in terms of employment. I don't know the technical terms, sorry, but the general gist is that everyone must be treated equal in terms of employment opportunities, right, in society. That's regardless of race. It has to be equal.
Yeah.
Now, what they want to do in California is they want to get rid of it for the state of California. They want to roll it back. They want to get rid of it because they feel like because some minorities have been treated unjustly in the past, right? That there would need to be some, I guess, overcompensation, or there would need to be some unequal application of certain laws in order to undo that. So what I'm trying to explain to you people here is that they're trying to undo an equal justice protection so that they can give certain communities an advantage, right?
No, but like,
in jobs and stuff like that. Let me finish. So that they can give them advantages, right? And they can apply those advantages from a state level. This is state sanctioned, I guess you could call it reverse racism in a sense, because it's going to be based off of certain communities, based on their race, based on the fact that they were historically. I mean, this is just crazy stuff. This is just crazy because, you know, like, I mean, Toby, I might trip in here. I might trip in here. They are introducing this legislation in California. People don't understand what's going on. Look it up, guys. Look it up, girls. They are introducing this legislation. They, like, in different states, they've been introducing one legislation or the other. But I don't want to get too far away. I wanted to bring that up. Again, we have to go back to this letter. We have to go back to this letter because I want to finish. We have to go back to this letter because this is where the reason why I bring up this letter is because this letter is in a way, it's a cry for help. These people are telling you there's something going on here, guys. Farid Zachariah is in this letter too. He signed up to this letter. There are some other people here that I like. Coleman Hughes, that's one of my guys. I love him. David Fromm. Like, these are people from all different, both sides of the aisle coming together saying, look, there's something going on here, people. See, a lot of people they're too engrossed and they're so obsessed with what's going on in. I mean, the way I see it is a lot of people are way too obsessed over Trump. Don't get me wrong. He also tends to bring a lot of attention to himself too. He tends to do a lot of dumb stuff too. But there's something else going on behind the scenes here, people. People's voices are being drowned out. It's happening. This is a big part of the reason why we put this freaking podcast together, because we felt like we had to speak. There's a lot of shit going on here.
I mean, like, let me actually just real quickly, and it's in relation to Trump. Like, yes, like what you just said is true, but like there's so much going on, and everyone is distracted by Trump. But in a way, I feel it's both a reaction to Trump, and that reaction to Trump could possibly, in the end, be the undoing of these people. So, like, basically, what do I mean?
Okay, let's talk about it.
Can you hear a sound in the background?
I can hear. What's going on there? I can hear horn.
Okay.
Are you in the car?
Sound. Yeah, I'm in the car. Like, I was actually saying, a big thing about why all of a sudden this whole thing of cancel culture, being woke and things like that has risen in the past few years is basically, I feel the whole idea of like elites and corporatist Democrats was to use the far left to fight Trump.
Wait, sorry. Repeat that. I want to make sure because I
feel that in the past few years, in order to fight Trump, like many of like the moderate and corporatist Democrats have emboldened the far left.
Okay.
But now things are going beyond anything they possibly could have imagined, because what they probably were thinking was they would embolden the far left to fight Trump, and then once they retain power, they'll find a way of marginalizing the far left and, putting them back in their place.
Yes.
But things have kind of backfired, because regardless of how you see it, and I don't want to go too much into actual electoral politics here.
Yeah. That's a separate podcast episode.
For example, let me just say this and then I'll stop there. For example, if let's say Joe Biden wins in November, right?
Yep.
Joe Biden has no choice but to reward the far left for helping him win.
He has to, right?
In 2000, he has to. That's politics for you, but
and guys, for those that are wondering what we're talking about, right? We consider Biden as he's not far left. Biden is just establishment. We have people that are establishment, right? And you have people that are on the fringe, right? So someone like Bernie, right? We would consider him far left. In terms of economic solutions, right? His solutions they're considered like on the socialist, spectrum. He even calls himself an economic socialist, right? So you have that one component of far left, which is more in terms of seeking justice for people that have been economically disadvantaged, right? More economics, and that that doesn't necessarily cut. It doesn't really speak to any one race or the other, right? Because well, let me finish. They are white poor people too, right? So you have that spectrum of the party. You have this other spectrum of the party, far left, so that we make sure that we're making it clear who we're talking about. That it's not so much about, economics is part of it, but it's they're more focused on the racial politics. They're more focused on the racial politics and identity politics, right? This is the far left that you're referring to. People that feel like, that feel like politics and race are one in the same. There's almost like they intersect, and there's no way you can talk about politics without talking about the injustices of certain minorities in the past, right? And this is the other faction that you're referring to. Now, you're saying that they've gotten Biden in office, which isn't. It's not entirely true, because I get where you're coming from. Black people got him in office, right?
True.
They got him in office, South Carolina, when doing and don't let me say office. They got him to win the nomination, right?
Yeah.
But it's not these far left progressives that you're referring to that necessarily got him in office. It was just voters, right? Black voters that were used to certain names. They weren't used to some of the other names that they saw. Certain personalities. And who's that guy? That black politician. What's his name?
Jim Clyburn.
Jim Clyburn pretty much called on all the black people in the South to put this guy in office. Now, all those black people that we're talking about, they're not necessarily the far left that you're speaking of, right?
That's very true.
Yeah. Okay. So go on.
Let me just quickly interject and make 2 points. The first point you just recently made was those black voters are not necessarily the far left. And a key distinction to make is, which many people mistaken many times, is many black voters are actually not far left at all.
They're not. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
When I talk about far left, primarily speaking, and this is a mistake again, there is tons of statistical data to prove this. Many of this, social justice work people are solidly middle upper class people.
Middle upper class, yes. And a lot of them are white too.
Yeah, and the reality is, at the end of the day, one thing I've come to conclude is there is a different way that lower class black people look at issues of racism from a way that upper class people look at issues of racism. Now, what do I mean? At the end of the day, many lower class black people, as much as they might be what's the word? I don't want to say bitter, but very enraged about the injustices that have happened and things like that, there is a favor which they simply do not have. Because this whole thing about being woke, actually, many people are comparing it to basically an evangelical movement.
It is.
It's almost like a faith component.
It's become like a religion. It really has.
Yeah,
it really has become a new religion.
Yeah, there's almost like a faith component to this. And then my very last point, which I was going to make in relation to Bernie Sanders and his socialism, is something key many people must never forget. Bernie Sanders is a socialist who came of age in the 1960s and 1970s. And for socialists of that time, they are skeptical about this whole identity politics thing. For them, what primarily matters is class.
Yep.
And they see identity politics as a way of actually dividing the working class. Because as much as Bernie Sanders might say a couple of things, to make the current identity politics people happy,
Yeah.
the guy isn't fully on board with this whole identity politics thing.
He's not,
And
but then Toby, you have to admit that he evolved a little bit, because 2016 I was a Bernie Sanders fan, and he really wasn't on the wave at all. But since then, like compared to his campaign this time around, he started he started doing some performer. He started performing towards them a little bit too. He started using some of their language. He started incorporating some of the race politics talking points. And I think that was a big part of the reason why he didn't galvanize as much support this year.
People as he once did.
Because there were a lot of people of all. I went to Bernie Sanders rallies. It was a diverse crowd, as diverse as they come. I mean, there were former Republicans, there were moderate, there were blacks, there was whites, there was everyone there. People rallied around him the same way people rallied around Trump. But something happened. But go on, sorry.
Yeah, it has to do with this whole thing. It's like, look, here is just the reality about politics. In many ways, for politicians to win, they have no choice but to move with the direction of time. And Bernie Sanders has simply done his calculation and figured out that this is where things are moving. I have no choice but to move. And which also lead me to also say something else about this whole identity politics thing is right now there is this whole what do they call it? Author, her last name is, I believe, Diangelo. There's a book.
Robin Diangelo.
Called Robin Diangelo.
Okay, and by the way, we're still going to do a breakdown of that book because we have to talk about it. But we're not going to do it this. But go on.
A key point I need to make here, just a buttress.
Wait, but Toby, before you get into that point, can you just give them context on what this book is about? Because we're talking about this Robin Diangelo book. Some people might not know what we're talking about. Robin Diangelo is called White Fragility, and this book is like the template for a lot of these woke activists, as proof of how systemically racist white America is. It's basically this woman that comes out and talks about how everything she does is racist. She admits that she is racist. It doesn't. It basically, the book is saying just being white makes you racist because you've already gotten advantages as a result of being white. I mean, this stuff is. She talks about in the book. I've read excerpts. She talks about how there's this one part in the book where she talks about how she's going to go meet a friend, and then she sees a bunch of black people there, right? And she's thinking her friend is there, and then she suddenly started getting anxiety, and that she was wondering, why am I getting anxiety? And she basically what she's saying is that this is all white people. That the idea that all white people are just generally uncomfortable around blacks, and that anxiety is your internalized racism. I mean, this stuff is just toxic. Guys, this stuff is just toxic because first of all she's speaking for all white folks, which doesn't even make any sense. And even though what she sounds like maybe somewhat, I don't know, some people might consider it ignorant, racist, whatever. Who says that's how all white people view black people? Like, what are you talking about? But that's what this book is about. And all these scholars, they've been using it. They've been using it within corporate circles. They have. The people that take this book, they use it as evidence and they present it within corporate America. They're corporations that are right now, they are crafting their HR policies based on this white fragility ideology of all white, of just not being black, just being white and having that power automatically makes you racist. And everything you do has to be, and you have to be working as an anti-racist. Everything you do, all your actions has to be to reverse this racist structure, or if not, that makes you a racist. That's what this book is about, essentially, right? Is that a pretty good summary?
Absolutely. No,
Okay,
no,
go on.
that's a very good summary, and two very key points to make. Where you would wonder that where are things headed? I have actually read reviews of this book by white supremacists who have said, in many ways, yes, they do agree with a certain assumptions.
Yeah.
So just think about that for 1 second. White supremacists are basically saying that actually the certain assumptions are not wrong.
Yep.
We agree with you. We only disagree with you where you end and where you take the sense to. And Corey, you just made a very key point here about how it's now a book within corporate America. Let me link this back to the whole thing of Bernie Sanders and socialism and how people of Bernie Sanders' generation are skeptical of identity politics. Even though I'm not a socialist, and you know my views about socialism and things like
Yeah.
that. In many
So,
ways,
so
I have
wait,
to-
wait. So for clarity, can you just give people your political background, like what you ascribe to? It's more libertarian, right?
I mean, like you can call me a classical liberal, you can call me a libertarian. I mean, I fit perfectly in that whole mold.
Okay. Go on.
Yeah, I fit perfectly in that mold. So, like, what's the point I'm trying to make here? Like, one of the critiques of like Bernie Sanders type socialists or classical socialists who believe that it's class struggle that matters. One of their beliefs is identity politics is a ploy to divide society and divide the working class, right?
Yep.
I have to accept, in a way, I do agree with them in saying that because basically, under like the classical socialist framework, corporate America is their enemy. And
Yep.
if you think about this, why is corporate America promoting identity politics? What will they what's the word?
Gain from it?
Benefit from promoting someone like Robin Diangelo?
Good question.
Because
Good question.
because if you think about it, like let's assume we are socialists, we're working within the classical socialist framework. If the working class are highly suspicious of one another, they are horribly divided along racial lines. How are they ever going to, form a mass coalition to take on?
Okay. So
corporate
I'm glad.
America?
I'm glad you said that. So it's really more of a divide and conquer. And let's just give them. I guess for them, it doesn't cost them to do this because they figure society is already on this wave anyway. There's this growing
Exactly.
consciousness within society. It doesn't hurt them to do this and position themselves as being sympathetic towards racial injustice, right?
Absolutely.
They're able to get that social capital from it, and they're able to keep doing what they do. You know what I'm saying? And making money.
Exactly.
So and then that way they're not, and then they're not faced with bad press, because I think that's probably one of their fears. They don't want to be deemed as racist or promoting racist structures.
Exactly.
So for them, it's convenient
Exactly.
for them to do this. But like I said,
Exactly.
even within the workplace, man, people are afraid to say anything. I mean, me, I've never shared politics in the workplace. Anyways, I've always known better. But it's happening. People are afraid to talk. You know why? Because you lose your job. You lose your freaking
Absolutely.
job if you say anything that
Absolutely.
strays from the main narrative, right? They're gonna say, okay,
You lose your job. Yeah.
you lose your job. So it's almost like everyone needs to fall in line. And again, it goes back to this letter. This letter is like a cry. This letter was published on July 7th. Wait, let me see. July 7th, 2020. This was about a month ago. Do you know, since this letter was published, some of the people that signed up on this letter, they've retracted their.
Yeah.
They retracted. There's this one guy, Matthew Iglesias, right? He got in trouble with his employer. He works for Vox. For those that don't know, Vox is a very liberal outlet. They talk about liberal politics, all this stuff. And he got in trouble. He got in trouble to the point that his boss told him to not, because they saw that his name was on it and people started getting mad. some people just retracted their support. They were like, "Oh, we didn't realize that this was some kind of justification for people like J.K. Rowling." I guess they didn't want to be associated with certain people that were on the list that they felt like were racist or were supportive of this racist structure or whatever. Or and they didn't want people trying to justify racism and all this stuff. So like 2 people pulled out. Matty Iglesias, he didn't pull out. He's still on the list, but his boss told him not to talk about it on Twitter. Like it was a big deal. Like his boss tweeted him. You know his boss now, Ezra Klein.
Yeah,
he's one of the owners of Vox. Matty Iglesias is one of the founders of Vox too. But I guess Ezra Klein is the one that manages the whole thing. He told him, do not tweet about this, that is divisive. Can you imagine? Because you came out to say we shouldn't stifle opinions and the letter is not even if you look at letter do you know why I think they ultimately filled with this letter? Because the way they started out, right? They started out with the forces of liberalism are gaining strength throughout the world and have a powerful ally in Donald Trump, who represents a real threat to democracy. So they came out trashing Donald Trump. I mean, they're trashing Donald Trump. They're saying all this stuff. They're pretty much giving all these disclaimers to let you know that, look, we are liberal. We are on the democratic side. They're saying all these things, right? And it's still not enough. Some of them still got in trouble just for saying, let us be able to have debate. See, that's why I wanted to start. That's why I wanted to start this podcast with this topic, because this is what it's speaking to, man. We're able to debate. We're able to have open debate. I've gone through personal issues in my life where it's like I've been able to say certain things, and when I've said certain things, I've been looked at as a certain way. It's so, keep in mind, I'm not a Republican. I'm not, even as much as people want to joke about me. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I used to be a registered Democrat. I left the party. I'm an independent. My views used to be very liberal. Now I've learned to embrace some conservative values. I think America needs a mixture of both. I think America, to me, I see conservatism as daddy and liberalism as mommy. Conservatism as accountability. Conservatism as conservatism as strength in a lot of ways, right? Liberalism is the empathetic side. That's why I call it mommy. And we need both. You know what I'm saying? Liberalism is the people that they tend to care for they tend to be more concerned about the less fortunate, right? At least they tend to be. Their policies don't always show it. They tend to be, but they project themselves as that party, which is needed. Conservatives tend to they tend to aspire to the most successful in society, right? That's why they're all about big business. They're all about the people that create jobs, and we need both. We need a good mixture of both, and that's why I embrace both, some liberal values and some conservative values, and I try to take the best of both worlds and employ it in my life. But then I can't even come out and say certain things these days, right, without being deemed as I don't want to say the words. And I'll tell you, like I went through this with even with the Smiling Sufferer podcast, right? And I'll be honest with you, I had like some other co-hosts that I had on there, and I'm not gonna get into too much personal stuff, but let me just say, it was unfortunate some of the allegations that were lobbed at me because of my opinions. And some of those opinions centered around the whole George Floyd case, talking about police brutality. And I was talking about it from a place of, I have been a victim of police brutality myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know what this means. I'm the black man. I'm the one that's being that you guys are saying I'm at risk, right? So how can you say that my words are somehow more hurtful or more dangerous or would contribute to more racism? That was the implication of one of our discussions with one of my co-hosts. I'm not going to name names, but that was the implication that what you're saying is dangerous. You're giving people a reason to be racist or something like that. And I'm like, how do you get to be more concerned than me, the black man, the one that's allegedly being killed, right? I'm the one being killed by authorities. How can you be more outraged than me? And how can you say those words? How can you direct that kind of vile towards me? And I'm not even going to get into the details of what was said, but just the long and short of it was that there were things that were said towards me that shouldn't have been acceptable. Now, I have a tough skin. I can accept it, right? I can accept whatever it is. But then it went even further that some of these people, some of my co-hosts, one of my co-hosts felt the need that they had to dissociate themselves from the podcast. And to me, that was just like the final slap. I'm like, first of all, you insulted me, and then now you feel like you're too good for this. I'm like, nah, you good. I'm good. And it was at that point that I realized that, you know what, I have you cannot tell me that I cannot speak my own truth. You can't. Yes, I get it that I can't discount people's lived experiences, right? That's what they always say.
Absolutely.
My lived experience. But then I also have a lived experience too. And I get to have a say. It goes both ways. And this idea that there are only certain opinions that you're allowed to have, it is getting toxic. It is permeating throughout society. And people know it. People are keeping quiet. You all freaking know this. You all know this. There's a lot of bullshit that's out there. But no one wants to talk. Everyone's too scared. Everyone's too scared. You know what I'm saying? And they start saying things like, "Oh, it's dangerous. You don't know how people will perceive that." And I'm like, I'm the black man here. It should be, I'm the one that people are saying that is being gone down, right? How can you be more outraged than me? It makes no sense. Again, I come back to this letter, a letter on justice and open debate. A letter on justice and open debate. Our cultural institutions are facing a moment of trial. Powerful protests for racial and social justice are leading to overdue demands for police reform, along with wider calls for greater equality and inclusion across our society, not least in higher education, journalism, philanthropy, and the arts. But this needed reckoning has also intensified a new set of moral attitudes and political commitments that tend to weaken our norms of open debate and toleration of differences in favor of ideological conformity. That was the opening line. That was the opening line. And then they went up to shit on Trump. I mean, what more do you want? They're shitting on Trump. You know what I'm saying? It still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough.
One thing I'll kind of say, not to sound like, all negative here or anything is, I think what kind of makes this whole letter, even kind of more shocking is the fact that in many ways, like I've already alluded to, a number of the people in the letter themselves are not necessarily in a sense of canceling people themselves. Like, let's be 100% real.
Wait, I'm sorry. Wait, do you mind repeating that? You said a bunch of people in the letter?
Like, many of the people in that letter themselves are not necessarily innocent themselves.
No, they're not.
Canceling people. Because
You're right.
Here is the really crazy thing is all of these people who signed on to the letter is all these people are as mainstream as it gets.
You know what I'm saying? David Frum.
These people are not people with esoteric ideas or anything like that. They
Not
are
at all.
Mainstream as
Not
the
at
word
all.
mainstream can get.
Not at all. Barry Weiss. I mean, all these names. Fareed Zakaria. Like, what more do you need? They're crying out for help, man. They're all crying out for help, and they know it, and they're scared. After this, you see what happened, right? And this is how cancel culture works. If you come out to even dare to challenge cancel culture, you can get canceled doing that. And that's what happened.
Absolutely.
That's why some people retracted their support of this letter initially. Like 2-3 people, they fell out. They're like, no, we don't want to, because they were scared. And further proving the point, you see, I feel like where they messed up was, if they really wanted to talk about open debate, right? You do not do it within the context of, it's just us liberals. No, you open it up. You open it up to everyone, and everyone will get your support. What they did, right, was they tried to galvanize support within within the, I guess, the left or the establishment rank. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
so they cut out. Look, let's face it. About half of this country are Trump supporters. You've cut out half of the country by condemning the person that they support, right? Because that was what they did. They said the forces of liberalism are getting blah, 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 and have a powerful ally who, Donald Trump, who represents a real threat to democracy. I mean, so right off the bat, you've already cut off like half of your support.
Half the country.
So
Absolutely.
so you're left with this other half, with this left half, and you're trying to galvanize support within that half. Half of those people, half of this half are scared to talk. Anyways, so and you're right. Half of them do not support you right off the bat because they're the ones that are leading this march, right, of social justice and all this stuff, right? And the other half are too scared. Like, so you know what I'm saying? Like, it's almost like they completely missed the mark. I get where they were coming with this. It made sense, but they lost the plot. And I think that's why this letter went. You notice it didn't really make a lot of noise. I mean, it made noise initially, but it came and it went. You know, everyone is still fighting. Like, no one is. It didn't inspire anything, at least so far. Now, people are. I'm sure people are going to go back to it at some point, and they're going to reference this as okay. These are one of the signs. These guys were trying to tell us something. It's crazy.
No, but like Corey, let me actually say something which is key. Like what I personally feel is, it's the backlash to everything that's going on, which I fear the most. Because whether we like it or not, some kind of writing backlash might be in the book to everything that's currently going on. That's what I fear most. And
wait. So you're scared the backlash will. Can you explain that?
No, like, not necessarily what I fear the most, but what I can see happening is some kind of right-wing backlash to everything that's going on.
Oh, I see what you mean.
What I fear is many of these people are so engrossed in what they're doing that they're not even thinking about that possibility. Because a very good example is basically, look at how Trump came out of nowhere and won in the year 2016.
Yes.
In many ways, you can say that
was a backlash on the right.
Exactly.
It was a backlash on the right. It was. Because they were sick of the politicians. They were sick of the establishment politicians. And that's what people don't understand about Trump. Trump is merely a symptom of the sickness that had been going on in America for a long time. The system that kept repeating this cycle of just recycling these politicians to just do the bidding of corporations. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
And corporations and powerful men. It was just that's all it was. And I think the right, they noticed it early on. They noticed it before us. The left, right? When I say before us, I'm not talking about. Sorry, I'd say before us because I used to be on the left. But the left, right? We were still in this euphoric phase. We just got our first black president. I don't think we really know what was going on. And that, don't get me wrong. I feel like Obama did some good things. I feel like Obama, personally, I feel like Obama was the best president, and I'm talking about in modern times, right? The best establishment candidate that they've given us. The best. At least that's just my opinion. But that's within the context of establishment candidates. Don't get me twisted. Obama also did some effed up things, and he continues the same cycles of bullshit that a lot of the previous presidents used to do. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But I feel like we were still, at least me being on the left at the time, we were still lost in the whole Obama and his, eloquent way of constructing words and his inspirational, yes, we can. Everyone was gingered by that stuff. Everyone was gingered. But the right, man, they had noticed that, wait, there's something going on here. I know you were never really on the Obama train, were you?
I mean, okay, let me just fully come, really brutally honest over here and say where I stood on the Obama train. I would say maybe I was still on the Obama train until about 2011, early 2012.
Okay.
And then I kind of began seeing cracks and began seeing things which absolutely do not make sense. I mean, what example can what example can I give? Yes, sure, the economy eventually recovered under Obama,
Yes.
but the truth of the matter is the recovery was never that strong. And that's
It
part
wasn't. You see,
and in
that's
many
something
ways.
that I see now. You see, back then I thought it was so bad. I thought the economy was so bad, and that was why it was kind of like it took so long, and it was going at such a snail speed. That's what I thought. But looking back now,
Hmm.
and looking at when Trump came in office, you saw how that thing just started just heating up.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, in that whole regard, in the first year, things move slowly. And then let me just quickly come back to what you were saying about this whole thing about like, populism and things like that. Like in many ways, I would argue that it's been going on for about 10 years, if not more.
Wait,
I would
wait, wait.
say
You
like
argue that what?
populism has been going on for over 10
10
years.
years. Okay.
I would argue that what really broke the camel's back was 2008 because all the bailouts of the banks, the insurance companies, the
Ah,
auto industries
yes. Yes.
pissed off the whole country, both the left and
And
both
the
the
right.
right. Because people
Yep.
people people basically realize that basically there are two sets of rules. A
Yep.
set of rules for everyone else and a set of rules for elites. Like look at the whole thing about bailouts, for example. Like the way things work in this country as of right now compared to let's say, maybe in the past days,
Yep.
for any small business person, if
Yep.
you run your business badly and it runs into the ground,
Yep.
good luck.
You're on your own,
No
man.
one is coming to bail you out. You're on your own. But you have all these companies whereby they are speculating, doing
They were
risky
taking risks.
investments,
They were.
bad behavior. And then on top of that, and then this is now all to get, technical, but I don't want to get too technical here, is that
Yeah.
at the end of the day, different people have different, what's the word, explanations and reasons for the financial crisis of, '08 and '09, right?
Yes.
One thing I strongly subscribe to is the cause of the financial crisis of '08 and '09
Yeah.
was the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve made credit too cheap in the early 2000s and created a bubble. That's
Mm.
simple. And then what did the Federal Reserve then do to reduce the economy back up? They reflated the bubble and even reflated the bubble to even bigger heights. So in many ways, all the rises in the stock market we're seeing and the equities market, it is all Federal Reserve money. And where people really have to understand where this whole thing is effed up, and it'd be good if the whole country really understood what was going,
Yes.
like understands what's going on is.
Yeah.
What many people really did not realize is whenever new money is printed,
Yeah.
because that's basically what the Federal Reserve is doing. They're printing money and putting it into all these corporations.
Yeah.
The first people to benefit from the new money are the first people closest to where the new money is being printed. So, like, who are the people close to where the new money is being
Financial
printed?
institutions.
Exactly. And one other thing is, it is no mistake that in the past 10 years, both under Trump and Obama,
Yeah.
income and wealth inequality
Has kept
reached
increasing.
epic proportions.
So it's
during
almost
a
like
time
it's almost
whereby-
like it's almost like 2008 was a template to show that whenever we're in an economic crisis, this is an opportunity for the rich people.
Yeah, because what has
That's
basically
really what it
happened
is, and I feel like we're kind of seeing
because-
it right now, aren't we?
because
Aren't we with these bailouts?
we are because basically, Corey, what's happened is the Federal Reserve has basically given a signal that the Federal Reserve would never allow the equity markets to crash.
To crash.
That is the mentality on Wall Street
Wow.
right now. To believe that the Fed will never allow anything to crash, and once just by any chance anything begins going down, the
Yeah.
Fed will immediately print
It's money.
Now, what are the
Now
consequences?
the consequences. That's what I want to talk about. Consequences
Now-
of printing
now,
money.
where it to go, we do not know. But two things we can say is, I doubt that in the short term there will be hyperinflation or anything like that. The reason is very simple. The dollar is the world's reserve currency, and actually, the majority of dollars in the world are actually outside the United States. So actually, the
Yes.
United States has a huge advantage that it can print lots of money
Yes.
without fearing inflation. But what I then fear is the U.S. economy will become like the economy of Japan. Because Japan crashed in the late 1980s, and Japan has printed a ton of money
Since then.
since the 1980s,
Mm.
and Japan's economy is becoming a zombie every passing year. People basically call the whole phenomenon either the zombification of the economy
Yeah.
or the Japanification of the economy.
Okay.
So basically,
Okay. This is new to
Japan,
me, and I'm okay.
like, basically, Japan actually has basically been in stagnation in the past, like, let's say 20, 25 years. And Japan has printed more money than anything yet.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, Japan's GDP today is lower than in 95. That's something many people do not know. It's lower than in 1995. And Japan is an old society. So
Yeah.
basically, not to get too technical or bore people out, is basically, unless a way is found whereby the Fed should just tell the corporations, sorry, we have to, slow down on this money printing, find your level, the whole thing will go on. And then something else to also add is, that like nowadays, many people do not like invest money in savings accounts
Yeah.
because the rates are too low. They're like 1 or 2%.
Yeah.
And a huge reason why they want a 2% is because of all the money printing going on. It has driven the interest rate exceedingly low,
Yeah.
whereby the interest on the savings account is basically the same as the rate of inflation. So instead of doing a savings account, put your money in the stock market. And in many ways,
and that's what a lot of people are doing now.
exactly. But here is the effed up thing about the stock market. It's true that like the returns of the stock market are huge, that they can be up to 7 or 8% per year. But here is the problem. You might what's the word? Gain a lot of returns, let's say, in a span of a year, 2 years, 3 years. But all it takes is the market
One
correcting,
crash.
one crash, and everything you thought you had gained is wiped out. But with savings accounts, regardless of if things are wiped out or not, you are still going to have that your savings money.
Because we have to start wrapping up very soon.
Okay.
I want us to take it back to where this started from. This started from the consequences of the printing of the money that has been going on under Obama and Trump. Because keep in mind, we just put on. I just realized that this pandemic, this bailout fund, was it? Did they say it was like 6 trillion?
Yeah, like right
additional
now, Federal Reserve. Yeah, like it has been like an additional 4 trillion.
Okay, 4 trillion. Okay, so I think the total is 6 trillion or something, right?
Yeah, it's between
which is wild. Toby, I remember when this stuff was 1 trillion and people were tripping. People were like, trillion. Yeah. We are at 6 trillion. That is crazy. And you see, that's another thing that I want us to talk about, because this shows that even though Trump has talked a good game, he has failed in some other aspect, because like I said, he has continued this cycle. This cycle, but we can't take it any further, because my girl, she's ready to leave. We've been in the studio for hours today. I want us to put a pin on this one, because I want us to continue from here. Okay. I think next week we have to do another one of these. Because yeah. I mean, we touched on a lot of stuff today, but yeah.
One last comment.
If you could just give us some wrap up comments.
Yeah. Like basically we're talking about the whole kind of cancel culture, its origins, its consequences, and one of the last things we're talking about is the Federal Reserve money printing.
Yes.
And one thing which I strongly believe is many people will not fully understand the events of the past 10 to 12 years unless they understand the consequences of the federal money printing. The Federal Reserve is the elephant in the room.
Mm.
No one is
paying attention to.
About.
I know.
The Federal Reserve is the Federal Reserve is what widens everything from economic inequality to even funding the warfare state. So basically, the fact that America, for lack of a better term, today is an empire would not be possible even without the Federal Reserve. So we'll continue from next
there. I love that. I love that. All right, Toby. Again, thank you guys for joining us for the first episode of the Two Tobis podcast, bringing you political commentary, commentary on current events, commentary on history, historic events, and just a whole bunch of stuff that's going on in today's world, trying to make sense of it. This is what Toby and I are going to be trying to do in the next coming weeks, months. Just helping to help break things down and to understand what's going on in our society today. I think it's high time our people, both Africans, Nigerians, blacks, whoever, we need to really start understanding what's going on. We really need to. I'm still learning. As I learn stuff every day.
Still learning.
Yeah, so we hope that you can join us on this journey. We hope that you can engage us. We hope that you can fact check us. Bring it on. I'm not gonna claim to know everything or to be perfect on everything or to be accurate on everything. You know what I'm saying? So please, your feedback we would love on the Two Tobis podcast. So thank you for joining us again. Peace out. This is Corey, and we got Toby on the mic.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Peace.